Let's talk to Jack Elsom and get the show on the road. Jack, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Very well indeed. I've enjoyed reading all of the various different sketches from yesterday in the Rose Garden, including yours. I mean, it was a very gloomy, dismal kind of thing all round, really, wasn't it? Not much to get excited about, not much to get kind of behind. It just was, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, as I wrote in The Sun today, it was an absolute scorching morning in Downing Street yesterday, but that is where the sunny news stopped, because Keir Starmer essentially grimaced his way through that 20-minute speech yesterday, in which he was, pretty blunt about how awful the budget is going to be in about 9 weeks' time.
Right.
He, basically reversed a dump truck over the Tory rule the past 14 years and said that has left them with no choice but to make these cuts. And the question now is whether families who are going to be grappling with spending cuts and having to tighten their belts with possible tax rises are going to stomach that. He is betting the house on the fact that they will. The problem is that he's got a very short honeymoon period, and at some point Labour are going to have to take the responsibilities for the choices that they are making. And so I think at the moment they're doing a pretty good job at prosecuting the Tories for being potentially irresponsible with the nation's finances, even though I think the Tories would probably argue against that. The question now, I think, is how long they are successfully able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that he's already lost his credibility by coming out with a lot of the stuff he's been coming out with in the past 7 weeks anyway. Because to say that, there's a black hole of 24 billion that they didn't know was there is incorrect. Everybody knows it's incorrect. Everybody knows. We've got a clip from April when he refers to the black hole of actually 50 billion. So, they knew it was there. It's very, I would say sort of dispiriting to see this kind of dishonesty being purported by these Labour politicians. We also know that he has got choices. We also know that he's giving away loads and loads of money to the trade unions. He's giving them all pay rises. He's buying their loyalty, if you like, at the expense of everybody else.
Yeah, and politics is about choices. He has made a choice to prioritise big pay rises, public sector workers, over other groups, for example, most notably pensioners, axing universal winter fuel payments. Listen, that's a political choice which he is entitled to make. I think that a lot of people, though, one would say, some of these pensioners are going to be really, really vulnerable this winter, because, it's not just the poorest pensioners who won't get universal winter fuel payments, because if you earn just over £12,000, then you're not eligible.
Right.
Now, that is not very much money. But also handing massive pay rises to unions, people might say, one, well, it's already starting to backfire, because if you look at the train drivers, ASLEF are launching another strike in a few days' time.
Yeah.
So they clearly haven't been stopped. But also a question I asked Keir Starmer yesterday in that Rose Garden was, are you now not going to spend the rest of your premiership, now that you've shown that you're willing to get your checkbook out, essentially playing whack-a-mole with various union demands? Because if they know that you are willing to maybe not meet their entire pay deal, is what he said yesterday. They didn't meet the 35% for junior doctors, but 22% is pretty bloody generous when you're looking at pay rises, when inflation's only about 2%, and nurses didn't get that much, and so you can see other sectors.
No, it's actually, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's never going to stop. It's just going to be one pay round after another. But let's have a look at what he said on winter fuel.
As I've just said, I didn't want to have to deal with the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. But we have to fix the NHS. We have to fix our homes, our schools. And pensioners rely on them in the same way as everybody else does. So I'm not going to preempt the budget, but I'm absolutely not going to accept that the inheritance that we have isn't anything other than dire, a £22 billion black hole.
Yeah, which he knew was there. So, I mean, the perception is that the only people who are so far suffering at the hands of the Labour Party are pensioners. And if he wants to save the NHS, it's not a very good idea to create a circumstance or a set of circumstances where more pensioners might end up in hospital.
Lots of campaigners have been warning about this. I think Age UK said that it could be a proper public health emergency.
Yeah.
And there are going to be 2 million pensioners who basically fall through the cracks, where they're not rich enough to be able to survive without this, but they're not eligible to actually claim it in a means-tested system. And so, you might, and there's lots of pressure now, especially from even in his own party, to broaden the scope of this eligibility at the October 30th budget. Because at the moment, it strikes me there's going to be a lot of people now who are literally, quite literally, left out in the cold after October 30th.
Do you think there's any chance that they're softening us up on this, though, that just in case they do need some kind of a bump in the polls, they're actually going to tell us how terrible it's all going to be, and then suddenly, as Rachel Reeves gets up to speak, they suddenly pull a couple of rabbits out of the hat and go, well, actually, we've managed to do this, and we've managed to find some money, and we're actually going to, you know, actually make it less bad than we told you it was going to be?
In most budgets, there's always some sort of sweetener to sort of sugar the pill a bit, but I can't see it being a, some things are bad, some things are good budget. I think it's going to be pretty bad. And I think the only reason for that is that if they want to raise money, and we know that they do, then you have to do it really in your first budget, because then you have a argument. You can sell to the country and say, we've been forced to do this by the last lot. You know, we didn't want to do it. As Keir Starmer said yesterday, I think if you get into a second, third budget, that doesn't really wash, and people will go, hang on a minute, you've been in power for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And that's when it becomes a bit more unsustainable. So I think they're going to try and use this budget to raise as much money as possible. Whether there will be, you know, a sort of little rabbit, probably, but I can't see it being anything substantial.
Now, last couple of days we've been playing that clip from last year about Keir Starmer saying that there would be no cronyism under his government, and everybody would have to absolutely buckle under, and if anybody, I think he said they'd have to be joking if they thought they could get away with cronyism under his government. But he still gets very, very tetchy, doesn't he? He gets asked about it. Let's see what he said.
Most of these allegations and accusations are coming from the very people that dragged our country down in the first place. So you'll forgive me if I take that approach to it. We are going to fix the foundations. We've got to do it at speed, and I'm determined to have the right people in the right places to allow us to get on with that job.
And, of course, you know, that doesn't answer the question about Lord Wahid Ali. And you can say, until the cows come home, oh, the people making the allegations are all Tories. Well, actually, that's not true. You know, newspapers are making allegations, newspapers are asking questions. You're all there expecting to get an answer out of him, and he doesn't want to give it. And there's no doubt that Wahid Ali had no business having a Downing Street pass just because he gave them a load of money.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the country and talk viewers will remember Keir Starmer in opposition, almost sort of making a career of getting up in the House of Commons and tearing strips off Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak for, you know, alleged examples of Tory sleaze. And he sort of, you know, said that he was, you know, Mr. Rules, he called himself, you know, for a long time. And so I think this is really, really quite damaging for him, because it goes against the grain of everything which he claims to be. And they are pretty straight questions, you know. Who signed off on Ali's? Why was he in Downing Street? What jobs was he doing in Downing Street? Why did you, a pretty well remunerated politician, need him to buy your suits and glasses for you? You know, these are all questions which I think journalists have been asking, and you know they kept asking in the number 10 lobby briefing about an hour after that press conference yesterday, and sort of answers came there none. They're sort of just trying to practice under the carpet.
Well, the closest they've got to anything is to suggest or to mumble something under their breath about him being part of the transition team. Well, what transition team? He didn't have anything to do with the Tories. Why would he be in a transition team?
No, but also it seems a bit contradictory, because you know, Pat McFadden, the senior cabinet minister, on the airwaves at the weekend said he wasn't involved in any government business. But by definition, a transition is the transition of government. So it's quite unclear at the moment, you know, what he was actually doing in that job. And I think that, you know, people that are privileged enough to have Downing Street passes probably deserve to give answers to the country which puts them there.
Well, this is the trouble, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, they are our servants. He kept making this point that, you know, they're a government of service. You know, we've got the Rose Garden back to use for service. I mean, I don't know. Does that mean I can go down and have a little, you know, a picnic there at some point if I don't want to take some people down and, you know, have my piece of cake of the Downing Street Rose Garden? I mean, it seems ridiculous. But you lightened the mood a little bit, didn't you? You asked him a question about Oasis. Let's see what he said.
And just quickly, you spent a lot of time today looking back in anger, but are you happy that Oasis has decided to reform on your watch?
What can I say in relation to that? It's very, very good. It's a great song. I'm not sure I'm the best place to champion it after the last 20 or 30 minutes. But look, let's see what happens with Oasis.
I mean, that's about as uninspiring an answer as I can think of, really. I mean, you gave him it on a plate. He could have actually made himself. He should have come up with something funnier than that. God help us.
Some might say that, Mike, but sorry, some may say that. Some might say, but it's not.
Yeah,
I butchered
you've
my
gone
own
too
puns,
far
but
now.
yes.
You've missed the second one up.
We've gone down an Oasis rabbit hole. I'm just so excited for them to come back. So I think I got a bit of Oasis mania as well. But I did also ask some questions about the unions for people in my Twitter mentions. I think I'm just asking about Oasis, just for the record.
Yes, absolutely right. Now, I've got something to play you because we had a voice note yesterday from a woman called Claire, and this is what she had to say.
Morning, Mike. The song for today for Keir Starmer. I beg your pardon. I never promised you a rose garden. Thank you.
So I'm not going to suggest that your chief sub is watching this show every single day, but the headline in the Sun, page 8 today, I never promised you a rose garden. I know that, you know, it's a bit of an obvious one, but still, you know, we're all in it together, as it were. What about today? He's off to Germany. I'm saying he's going there partially, it seems to me, to sort of undo Brexit a little bit. I mean, he says he wants closer trade relations with Germany. He wants to get immigration under control because of that. What sort of chances has he got, one, of doing that? And two, is he sort of unpicking Brexit a little bit here?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, the you know, what we were trailed overnight was a dash to Berlin to go and see Chancellor Olaf Scholz and get some sort of pact, some sort of vague, nondescript pact, which would allow access to German markets better and be better for British businesses. But I think what's really caught everyone's eye is this phrase, turn the corner on Brexit, because a lot of people will obviously remember Keir Starmer as Jeremy Corbyn's shadow Brexit secretary, leading that fight for the second referendum.
Yeah.
When he was then leader himself, he sort of fell over himself to, you know, shed that skin and almost tried to portray himself as a bit of a born-again Brexiteer, really.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see now that sort of shift in tone. We do know that he wants closer relations with the EU. The problem, and what we know about the EU after, you know, many years wrangling with them, is that they never give something for nothing. There's always a quid pro quo. And so if you want better access to their markets, what are they going to want in return? And there's been some speculation that this might involve a youth mobility scheme in which under 30s basically get almost freedom of movement from Europe into Britain. Now, if you're looking at trying to curb levels of migration, that's obviously going to be an issue. You might have some sort of deal on, I don't know, food standards or veterinary standards. Well, that could put us under the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, which would essentially mean we are a rule taker. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he manages to sort of navigate this path and sort of almost walk a tightrope in a sense, as telling people that he's not betraying Brexit, but also trying to forge these close relations that we know he wants.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you, Jack. Thanks very much indeed. Jack Elsom, the chief political correspondent at The Sun.